Have you ever sat in your professor's room and wondered what the little objects around the room meant and why they were there? Well, I certainly have. Welcome to Objects of Affection, where we do a deep dive into the objects which mean a lot to different professors here at the ANU. Today we're joined by Associate Professor Heather Roberts, who will give us a little bit of an explanation into some of the special things in her office today. Delve into some of your objects of affection, Heather. Could you maybe give us a little bit of a background about your research area and tell us a little bit about what you do?
So I've been an academic here at the law school for about 10 years. I study judicial studies. I also teach property law and constitutional law. I'm currently working on an ARC DECRA project which explores the idea around what makes the ideal judge and how those characteristics have changed over time. And in 2024, I'll be starting a new elective on judicial reasoning.
So as an expert on judges, I've been looking around your room and I see that one judge in particular occupies a lot of space in this room. Can you tell us a little bit about maybe our special guest that's joining us here today as well?
So, Isobel, you're right. Here is a doll that was brought back from America from my dear colleague Imogen Saunders. It is of RBG. My particular fascination and interest in RBG extends from the intersection of my interest of judicial studies and feminist studies. And I had the great privilege of teaching a comparative course on the US Supreme Court and the Australian High Court. And I taught it with an American professor, Professor Heather Elliott, and she was RBG's clerk in 2001. And so we had an amazing time teaching students from the University of Alabama and ANU about the differences between the High Court and the US Supreme Court and how judges decide in both courts, and the popular culture that arises around American judges and less so Australian judges. So particularly favoured object here, but you'll see there are a number of other RBG-themed items in my office.
Perhaps for some of the students who've stumbled across this video who maybe don't know who RBG is, can you give us a brief description about her illustrious career and perhaps a little bit about her significance to your career as well?
It's a great question, Isobel. And if any of the students want to Google RBG, you'll certainly come up with a huge amount of information. She was the second woman ever appointed to the US Supreme Court. She had a career advancing women's rights for decades before that. She lived a long and industrious life. She used to basically not sleep. She was so busy writing judgments and doing advocacy work on behalf of women. And because of, I feel like, I'm one step removed from her because of my dear friend Heather Elliott, who had worked so closely with her. So she's really been an inspiration for so many women in the law, and certainly a character too. She had a witty turn of phrase. She loved the opera. One of the stories I love about her is she was very good friends with a person on the court, Antonin Scalia, who was the polar opposite of her in terms of his approach to judging and individual rights, and yet they shared this love of food and opera, and they would go to get off to the opera together all of the time. Just a really good reminder that you can leave your intellectual and political differences at the door and still enjoy being friends with people of different perspectives.